Introduce to you the next state representative from Michigan's 106th District, Robert Bobby Kennedy. Hey.
Most of all, thanks to all of you for coming out on a weekend, a busy week, and it's sure humbling to have all this support. And I'm very thankful for your attendance. The plan here is that I'm going to give you a little bit of background about myself. I know a lot of you do know me, but a lot of you don't. So I want to make sure everybody gets my biography information. And then I'll get into my reason for running. Everybody wants to know why somebody wants to get into politics in this day and age. So I'll share that with you. A few of the issues that are priorities for me, I want to talk about those. But most of all, and then I have some people that I want to recognize. I have a couple of important people that I want to recognize. But then most of all, I want to hear from you. I want to find out what it is that you expect from your state representative in Lansing. And then after that, there'll be a short Q&A, question and answer session. I am a lifelong resident of the 106th. I was born in Alpena County. My parents lived in Oscoda, Michigan, which is in Iosco County. My family had a grocery store there. It was an IGA store right in downtown Oscoda. And I got the privilege, my parents told me it was a privilege anyway, of working there when I was in like 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade and such. But I really did learn a lot. They taught me a very strong work ethic and had high expectations, and that's the way they were able to attract customers into their business. And so I'm very proud that I had that opportunity. I did go on in 1966. I graduated with the Oscoda High School class of 66. In fact, there's a couple members I know here tonight that were in that class, and I'd like to recognize them. Jack Guy, who's been a lifelong friend.
Hey, Jack.
OHS class of 1966, and Linda Travis Ayers was also in that class. So I'm very happy to have some classmates of mine here with me tonight, high school classmates. Then I went on to Lake Superior State College. I only lasted up there one semester. I decided I didn't want to be an engineer. I wanted to work with people directly, and transferred into education. At that time, came to ACC for 1.5 years, Alpena Community College, and then transferred to Michigan State. And spent 2 years down there and got my bachelor's degree, and my major was elementary education. I was fortunate enough to be able to come back to my home community, Oscoda, and teach. I got to take advantage of all the natural resources that were in our area, the hunting, the fishing, the canoeing, the hiking, as well as working with children for 38 years. I had a 38-year career there. And I also am honored tonight to have a couple of my former students here that were in my class way back when. Well, one of them anyway. So I want to introduce those people. Dennis Ross, sitting over here with my wife Margie. He's from East Lansing and employed with Michigan State University. Dennis was in my class. And Craig Sharon, right up here in the front, was in my class back in the 70s when I taught 4th grade. And he's from Columbus, Ohio. So I did have a 38-year career in education, and in 2008 I retired, and my wife Margie and I were able to start working on our house. And in a couple of years we finished it. In 2010 we moved up to Harrisville. We had property up there, we had a big garden up there all the time. Finally we got to... Here's some more of my Oscoda folks here. So we actually moved in our house in Harrisville in 2010. Why am I running for office? I want to be a representative that stands for all of the constituents in the 106th District. I especially want to stand for the constituents that have been left out over the last 3 years. And that would be a lot of us sitting here in this room. I think the middle class has been left out. I think the working class has been left out. And so I want to make sure everybody is represented. And that's ultimately why I'm running. Two major issues that I'll be talking about, I have talked about. I've been campaigning actually for 6 months. One of them is campaign finance reform. And there's two parts to that. to that problem, to that issue. One is the amount of money that individuals and political action committees are allowed to donate to candidates. The state of Michigan has just doubled that. Between Christmas and New Year's, Governor Snyder signed a bill that doubled those limits. So for an individual in this race, you know, instead of getting a max of 500, you can get a max of 1,000 from an individual donor. And for political action committees, their limit went from 5,000 to 10,000. Well, there's already too much money in politics. So I don't understand the rationale of them passing a campaign finance reform bill, that's what they called it, and doubling the amount of money that's going to be involved. But that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the dark money that comes in to the scene, thanks to Citizens United Supreme Court ruling and recently the McCutcheon Supreme Court ruling. If you're familiar with those, if you're a 501c3, which is a social welfare committee or an issue advocacy committee, you don't have any limits at all to what you can accept for donations. And to make it worse, the people that donate don't have to reveal who they are. So these smear ads, as long as you don't say vote for or vote against a candidate, you can qualify as one of these committees and then collect unlimited amount of money and you have no idea who's putting it out there. And the Supreme Court can say that money is a form of speech, but we ought to know who's doing that speaking. And under the present system, we don't. So that's number one, and not necessarily the most important one. The most important issue is restoring state funding for our public schools. The last 3 years, the increases that the state talks about giving to our public schools have not kept up with inflation. In real dollars, our schools are taking a hit year after year after year. It's very difficult to do a good job educating our most precious resource, our children, if indeed we can't keep up with inflation every year in our schools. And you can see the effect of that throughout the 106 district. You know, we have schools that have had to cut all of the extra classes. There's schools in our district that don't offer any extra classes. They don't have counseling. Some schools don't have music. Some schools don't have hired librarians and such. And other schools have had to, they've tried to keep some of the special classes and stuff, but they've had to drastically cut the wages of their employees. And neither of those are acceptable alternatives. Our children deserve better and our communities deserve better. So I would definitely want to guarantee that every year the increases are going to keep up with cost of living, the increases for the state. The second part of education that I would work on is keeping it under local control. There are two ways now that your school district, in fact all local units of government, can lose control, and that is through the emergency manager bill that we turned down at the ballot box in 2012, but in the lame duck session, they said, hey, you know, we don't care what the voters said. They tweaked it a very little bit, and it's back in. And so basically, it takes away local control. You can vote for Board of Ed, you can vote for Township Trustee, you can vote for City Council, but the state can also usurp that vote and come in and take over. The other way schools can be affected is through the Education Achievement Authority, and that's where if they don't like the test scores that the students are getting in your school, they can also come in and take over schools, and the local board that was elected is basically kicked out of there. So I would work on that. I would repeal, as Paul said, I would repeal the so-called right-to-work laws. There's no rhyme or reason why, if a majority of the people vote to be in the union, that even if you're in the minority, you know, you don't have to pay your share of negotiating that contract and settling grievances. I mean, that would be like, I wrote Senator Molinar when that bill was before the Senate, and I said, that would be like me, I'm against the pension tax that you voted in, but since I'm in the minority, I can't decide not to pay for it, I still have to pay it. So it's the same thing when you apply it to right to work, and so I would work to repeal right to work. Also, we have to provide adequate funding to our other local units of governments, our cities, counties, and townships. The same trend that's happened in public education with this legislature and this governor has happened to our local units of government. They're having to come to the voters and ask for millages, that things the state has traditionally funded. So those revenue sharing sources need to be reestablished for our local units of government. I've always been a strong steward of the environment, and along those lines, I would work to create a long-term energy policy which calls for a steady and profitable conversion to renewable energy sources. We're on target to meet the mandate of 10% here in Michigan by 2015. We could easily do 30% by 2035, and I think we should commit to that, and I think we should do it. We should do it for our children, we should do it for our grandchildren, and the planet in general.
Yeah.
Also, talking about working long-term, I would also work long-term, and I don't have all the answers, but I would definitely work on a constant funding source for our highways and our bridges. You know, the experts tell us that we're about $1 billion behind where we need to be on an annual basis to keep our infrastructure in repair. And if you're going to have a strong economy, you've got to be able to move goods, and you have to be able to move people. So we do have to do that. Now, the current legislature and the governor have kind of tossed some ideas around. It's been under the amount that needs to be there, and so I think you need to sit down in a bipartisan fashion and work on ways to improve our infrastructure. The other part of our infrastructure up north here that really needs to be improved is the internet connectivity. You know, there's a lot of rural areas in this 5-county, 106 district, and especially if they're talking about trying to pass bills that would allow the communication companies to do away with landlines, then we have to have good, reliable internet and wireless communications. So, and that's an economic thing as well. It's not just a safety thing for those of us that need 911 or something. It's an economic issue. We have small businesses that could thrive out of their own homes if indeed they could market their product on a high-speed internet connection instead of having to do dial-up like some of us have to do. It's also an education issue. My wife and I go to the Alpena Board of Education meetings on a regular basis, and they've just adopted a great program there through Google Chrome where they can get real-time help with their homework on the internet. But the problem is most of the students in Alpena live in the rural areas that don't have high-speed internet, and so they're kind of left out. Yeah, I'll see you later. Thank you for coming. So they're left out. There's a real-time teacher on there for 2 hours a night, but the majority of the residents can't take advantage of it. So we need to do it for the economy, we need to do it for education. I'm sure when I get to Lansing, I'm being very positive about this, I'm sure there will be a grading system for all representatives. And I'm not sure what it is, I don't know what the criteria will be. I'm sure one of them will be constituent services. And I can guarantee you that I may not get an A+ in all the other areas, but in constituent services, I will get an A+. If you have a question, if you have a concern, if you have something that you need researched, you can rest assured that I will do that for you. If I don't know the answer, and I may not, but I will find the people that can get the answer for you. And I don't care whether you agree with my position on the issues or you don't, you're my constituent, and I will work for you. So I can make that commitment. Like I said at the beginning, I'm humbled by the turnout tonight. I can't thank you people enough. I've had times when I thought maybe I shouldn't be doing this, you know, and that's one of the things people ask me, well, what offices have you held before? Well, you know, I was a union rep, I was an officer in our union, I was a union negotiator, I always kept up on current events, but yeah, actually I haven't been in elected public office before, but I don't know that with the climate the way it is right now and the attitude towards Congress, I don't know that that's a bad thing. So, at any rate, I'm very thankful for the supporters I have, or if you just came to learn about me tonight, I'm very thankful for that. Before I move on into the part where I get to hear from you, though, I do have 2 people that I would like to recognize this evening. They're both very attractive women. Probably doesn't surprise you. One of them has a birthday today, and I noticed she skated way in the back of the room. But she is a very good friend. She is a full-time parent, stay-at-home mom, parent. She is very active in her community and her church. And for somebody in the millennial generation, she is very up to speed on current events. She quizzes me all the time and makes sure that I know exactly what's going on, not just in here in Alpena, but but worldwide. So our good friend Kristen Barton, way in the back. Happy birthday, Chris. Thanks for taking your birthday to come in here and see us. The other very attractive woman is my wife, Margaret. And I want to recognize Margaret as somebody that has been the glue in this whole campaign. There's been nights, we've been, what did we say, 26 meetings since September, and there will be a lot more to come. It's going to get more intense as the primary gets closer. And there's been nights when I didn't want to go. I didn't feel good, I was tired of going to meetings, and she was the motivation. Bob, we committed to this. We're going to do this. So for that, I thank you. Plus, she and a few of the other people on my campaign committee were responsible for organizing this tonight, and I'm very thankful for that. But I couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. So now, I guess, comes the most important time where you can tell me. I mean, I picked out the issues I thought were crucial to the state and to the district up here, but now's your chance to tell me the ones that I either left out or access the ones that I did talk about. So, come on in.
There's one thing, this is still true. One of the last campaign cycles, the voters are looking for candidates that will listen to them. If they only vote for Democrats, Democrats will listen to more Republicans because Republicans listen to much of money, whereas Democrats tend to listen to people.
Did you hear that? Can you hear that in the back? Basically Todd said, we've got a reputation as Democrats as being good listeners, just like you said, Bob. So he said, keep stressing that in the campaign because that's what people want to hear. Well, that's the logical thing to do. In fact, I was a public servant basically for 38 years, and if you didn't listen, you were in big trouble. So I do have some experience on that. Tom.
I attended some sessions last fall with Peter Patalia. Have you heard of him? And the subject was fracking, and Peter tried to present all sides, I guess. But he said at that time that he hadn't made up his mind about whether fracking was a good thing or a bad thing. And as the months have gone by, that question has been asked again, and apparently he still hasn't made up his mind. Have you made up your mind?
This is, I introduced, I'll get to your question in just a minute. I introduced Kristen to you earlier. This is her son. Her and Nathan have a son, and he's kind of like a surrogate grandson to my wife and I, because we were neighbors with him for years. And we love their children to death. And Grady's the oldest one. He's actually going to be going to kindergarten here in the Alpena public school system this coming year. Kindergarten, can you believe it? Are you ready for kindergarten? I bet you will be. So anyway, in order for me to endorse the type of fracking you're talking about the deep well, horizontal fracking.
Collingwood Shale, 12,000 foot deep horizontal fracking. That's what
there would have to be some more stringent regulations put in place. The ones that are in place right now don't offer the safeguards that we need. Our water up here in northern Michigan is our most precious resource, and I just think we need a lot more stringent safeguards in place, and to protect that water, to protect all of our resources. Thank you, Jim.
I want to hear your opinion of patient protection and affordable care, 2010. Are you going to back it, or are you going to say, we got to tweak this or that because you're afraid of how the holes are, that they're slimy Obamacare? It ain't a health insurance program. It's a law, right, to protect us from the insurance racket. So I want to know what you'll do if you're going to back up the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, a.k.a. Obamacare.
Okay, everybody heard that question on the Affordable Care Act? I think the good point that he makes is it is the law. And even though the House, the U.S. House has tried to repeal it umpteen number of times, 50 times, it's the law of the land. And so, we need to make the best of it. If there are things that are broken, the things that aren't working totally smoothly, we need to fix them. But, you know, we need people that are insured. It's too expensive to have people that aren't insured. It's not the humane thing to do to have people that aren't insured. A lot of times they're diagnosed too late to do any preventative work on it. They have to wait to go to the emergency rooms like millions of people have had to do. So, you know, this is there's some great parts of the Affordable Care Act. If there's some parts that don't work, Jim, I would be for tweaking them, but I'm certainly not for repealing the law. Good. Trying to get him to answer some questions. Yes.
Doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Good question. Genetically modified foods is what she's asking about.
You don't have to.
And the one problem that I have with Monsanto and some of the big companies that sell all this genetically modified seed, which gets turned into genetically modified food, is that they are basically exempt from any regulations by local government. You know, the state of Michigan has passed laws that says that, well, I don't care if all the people in Alpena County, let's say Alpena, for example, or Alpena, are in favor of not allowing those to be used in their county, to be grown in their county. They can't pass any county ordinance against it. The state has kind of usurped that. Now, you may also be asking about labeling. Are you asking about the labeling of GM foods?
We have a right to know what's in our food.
I'm sorry.
We have a right to know what's in our food.
Right. Okay. Yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. I've always been an advocate. You can talk to people like Craig that were in my class, or Dennis. You know, I always taught kids, even in 4th grade, read the food labels, look for preservatives, see if you can get foods that don't have them. Don't go overboard on the sugar. And we definitely have a right to know. I mean, if they're going to manufacture foods with GMOs in it, then we have a right to decide whether we want to eat them or not. So that has to be on the label. Good question.
Yeah.
What else do you want Lansing to do, or what else do you think they should be involved in? Dennis?
So, I've heard of this millennial generation that often gets sort of derided a little bit, but at the same time, we're some of the most educated groups of Americans that have come up in the last 100 years. So, what sort of plans do you have for keeping people like me in the state? Because I feel like when I'm done with all my education, there's nothing left for me here.
Did you hear that in the back? Basically, Dennis wants to know how I can keep the millennial generation, after they get a good education, like he's done and many others have, you know, how can we encourage those kids? How can we provide opportunities for those kids here in our state of Michigan? And I think what we have to do is we have to look at a way to make the economy robust. The philosophy, the economic philosophy that we've been working under for the last 3 years, and actually way back when Ronald Reagan was president, was a trickle down from the top. As long as you give all the benefits to the people at the top, they will make sure that there's a lot of jobs down at the grassroots level for people to have. Well, it doesn't work. That money gets invested, and those jobs don't happen. So we have to, I mean, I talked about infrastructure here, and needing to fix our roads and our bridges and internet and stuff. There's a lot of job potential there. And if you create good living wage jobs, that's the way you boost the economy, because that's where the masses of our people are. So if you create good living wage jobs, then the whole cycle. Robert Reich, I'm sure you're familiar with him, he was the Secretary of Labor, I believe, under the Clinton administration. You know, that's always been his philosophy. You've got to grow your economy from the middle out. And so that's the first thing that I would do. You know, and I wouldn't be averse to looking at tax incentives for businesses, but they would be the smaller businesses. I think the big corporations are doing just fine. But the smaller businesses, we might